Get the F off this shit. Get the F off this A. Oh, I didn't mean to close that one. Rough start to the show already. Rough start to the show already. Here we go. Here we go. Here we fucking go. I got my water. I got my Halls. Which, by the way, Halls, if you want to do a sponsorship deal with me, Halls. When you're coughing your ass off and you think you're going to die, give Halls a shot. They're okay, I guess. Major, good to see you, bud. Good to see you all today. All of you people lurking in the background. An old friend of mine just told me, literally 10 minutes ago, that he's been popping in and out of my streams and hasn't been saying anything. So if you're out there, I see you. I see you. It's interesting to think about, right? Because, like, in my brain space, I base a lot of the success on what's going on this stream just based on the chat and kind of how the interaction occurs and how that's happening. But, like, when I go and take a look at the numbers, there's more people out there who are listening than are actually participating in the chat. There's, I guess, people who would call themselves lurkers. So I gotta start focusing more on the raw numbers, but I hate doing that. I hate that so much. It drains my energy to do that. Like, you guys hear me say it a lot on this show, right? The hardest thing to do is deal with yourself. Well, going into the numbers and, like, actually looking at the nuts and bolts of what's happening, right? Oh, even if the result is, oh, things are better. You're doing a lot better. Look, the line is going up. Even if it is line going up, at the end of it, I'm like, oh, okay, the line's going up. Oh, okay. Oh, my God. And even if the line goes down, I'm just like, oh, my God. The line is... So I just feel like inside of my... What I need is a person in my life who's willing to just impassionately be like, and then just give me like a one sentence. That's what I really need in my life. But I assume that no one will do that for free. So we just carry on. All right, good start to the show. Good to see you grinning. Good to see you guys. Holy cow, getting sick is the worst. Getting sick is absolutely the worst thing. I don't recommend it to anybody. Wear your masks. Take your vitamin C. Do all your supplements. Do all your stuff, right? I let myself get complacent. I was like, oh, I've been wearing this mask for a while. I don't need this mask anymore. You know what? They're wearing this mask. Maybe it is a bit overwhelmed. Oh, and then I got sick again. Bro. It sucks. It sucks. And I didn't even get COVID. It wasn't even COVID. It was just like the normal shit. Just like the normal cold. It was like the cold came into the room and was all like, I'm sick and tired. I am sick and tired of everyone talking so much about COVID. I remember when the Spanish influenza killed thousands and thousands of you people, and we were the terror, we were the fear that spread across this grand nation, and we shall not be forgotten. That's exactly what happened to me. It was like the flu was just like, fuck COVID. It put on the old record. It like put on the old like swing stuff. It's like, we're going to put on a Chaplin film, right? And you watched it and you're like, yeah, this is good. This is good. This is good. Or like the Stooges, right? If anybody came up to you and said, we're going to put on some Three Stooges and we're going to watch the Three Stooges, you'd be like, shut the fuck up. But then if you actually sat down and watched it, you'd laugh. Don't pretend like you wouldn't. You know, like as soon as you tuned in to what the Stooges were about and the bandwidth, as soon as you lowered the bandwidth of your expectation of where the Stooges live, right? You'd have a great time. You'd have an absolutely great time. I promise you. I promise you would. But if someone suggested it to you, you'd still be like, what? Shut the fuck up. And it's how I feel about this cold, where it's like, I got a sickness, I got the flu, and everybody's like, was it COVID? Was it the new hip virus that's spreading across the land? And I was like, no, it was the common cold or maybe the flu. And everybody goes, oh, you're fine. Oh, and meanwhile I'm still here going, A few acres of snow. Good to see you, bud. Good to see you guys. So I've been out of commission for like a week, so I'm completely behind on everything. What is even happening in the world? What is even happening in the world? So we're going to start to go through, and honestly, I started taking a look through the news. I started taking a look at the headlines and all that kind of stuff, and it's essentially the same. Nothing much has really changed, right? Same old shit, Oddity. You got it. By the way, Oddity, this thing right here, I'm going to say, this is the Discord for the, if you're not part of the Discord, donate $1, you can get into the Discord, right? Or you can donate more. What you did here, Oddity, just sparklingly brilliant, bud. That's super funny. That's super funny. Danielle Smith. So Danielle Smith, right? It's the exact same story as Liz Truss. Like that's just the long and short of it. That's the reason why it's not, to me, it's not like this enormous. A Canadian politician journalist has been serving as the 19th Premier of Alberta since October 11th, leader of the United Conservative Party since October 6th rather, right? So in Alberta, they got rid of Kenny because Kenny was a disaster, like they got rid of Johnson, right? They got rid of Boris Johnson because Johnson was a disaster, because Conservatives are a disaster. They can't not be a disaster. They're ideologically driven. They have a religious ideology. They don't base what's going on in the world on facts or reason or science or evidence. Right? They hold on to a Bible that they refuse to open, and they stand upon that as if it's the one true gospel and one true truth, when really all they're doing is using it as a lens to funnel through their bigotry, right? They've got their internal biases and their internal bigotries, and they're trying to shove that through any kind of credible document they can have. And the document that they found to stand upon is the one that nobody else has read either. So it gives them a certain degree of credibility, but in the end, the entire institution is fraudulent, and your support of it is terrible. These people are actually worse than the Nazis, because even the Nazis weren't trying to destroy also themselves, right? That's the fundamental truth of modern-day conservatism. We all know it. Anybody who stands up and pretends otherwise, right, is either completely deluded or is also a Nazi. And there's just no other way to really talk about it. And if you're hearing me say, John, that's a bit of an extremist rhetoric. You know what's extremist rhetoric? The heat death of the planet. That's extremist. So maybe we should actually talk about that in a serious way. Anyway, so Danielle Smith is now standing atop the meritocracy of this hunking, like this hurling shit pile that is the Conservative Party, right? Same story as Liz Truss. There's no like big, like Liz Truss really fucked it up. Like really fucked it up, right? Like Liz Truss is like a true acolyte who like came in and was like, the solution to all of the problems is to literally just give a ton of money to the rich. And that will solve things. And even the system itself, even the system of capital, when Liz Truss came in and did that, even the system of capital itself was like, nah, brah, what? Like, literally the investors, the rich themselves, when Liz Truss did that, was like, fuck, what? What do you do? No! Like, that's how bad Liz Truss fucked up. That the death cult itself rejected her. So you're taking a look at a religious acolyte who is a true fundamentalist believer, right? That those within the highest echelons of the death cult, right? Like the actual owners of the society, here in Canada it would be people like David Thompson or Galen Weston or the Irvings. They don't actually believe any of this, right? Those guys don't actually believe any of the propaganda, right? Because they know better. They're smart, savvy business. Like, they're investors, right? They want to know what is real so that they can make a lot of money for themselves, right? That's why they rejected economics as a field in the universities and created business schools, because they need people to plant their feet on the ground and live in reality, right? But they don't expect the politicians that they buy to also actually fundamentally believe this stuff, right? And Liz Truss was absolutely like a fundamentalist, neoliberal, she true believer. like, really believes the idea that, yeah, the solution to society's problems is to destroy the public sector, privatize everything, give all the money to rich people, and then everything will be fine. Like, you gotta be fucking ridiculous. Like, you're a ridiculous clown child if you actually think that that's real. Like, at this, like, in the 80s, sure. In the 90s, sure. I could buy into that because things seemed to be going fine. But now, if you're still walking around saying that, yeah, just give all the money to rich people and it'll trickle down, rising tide, all boats, all that kind of stuff, you are a ridiculous baby-brained kindergarten-level child. Like, stop participating. Stop participating, and if you could really do us all a favor, right? If you're one of these guys who's like 80 and you're just stuck in your ways and you're never going to have your mind changed because reality doesn't matter to you anymore because you're looking at the pearly gates anyway, if you could just sort of move in that direction with a little bit more expediency, I know I would appreciate it. I know everyone around us would appreciate it, right? We just need less people to be voting for these guys. Because, like, for real, this is a dying religious ideology that needs to die faster than it can kill the species. Because that's the dynamic that's going on right now. And if that means that we should just show these guys the door with a little bit more, come on, so be it. I know that makes me sound like an asshole. I don't care anymore. These people are trying to destroy the species. Like, I don't know why we're pretending otherwise. Like, I don't know why we're, like, sitting in our cups and being like, grrr, and then we're like about it. Like, this should be just a statement of fact at this point. Just a statement of historical fact. That the Conservative Party of Canada, along with their allies in the Liberal Party, are doing everything they can to destroy the species. It's literally just a banal statement of fact at this point. And if you encounter anybody who disagrees, they're either delusional or part of it. And there is no other alternative. Like, show me the fucking alternative. And so Danielle Smith is just another one of these. She's another, like, what does the conservative death cult, what do the capitalist death cult, what does it do when it gets threatened? We've seen it in the past, right? It grabs hold of a woman, it throws her out in front of the public, and it says, if you disagree with what she says, then you're a misogynist. That's what it does. That's what they did to Kim Campbell back in the 80s with Mulrooney, right? That's what they're doing with Truss. It's what they're doing with Danielle Smith. It's the same. It's just let's have a woman deliver the bad news. Let's put a woman out in front. They'll be nicer to a woman, which shows you how disconnected and out of touch they actually are, because historically, no, we haven't been. Like, the populace is actually way harder on women than it is on men, politically, historically. Like, literally, the Mulrooney government went from, like, a majority government to 2 seats. And with Liz Truss, you're going to see exactly the same dynamic. It's like, Labor is polling, like, 30 points ahead right now. Like, it's going to be a disaster. And it's going to be the same thing here with Danielle Smith. Except the wrinkle in that plan is that the leader of the NDP is also a woman. So, yeah, no, but this is just it. Like, it will destroy the UCP. Like, it will. Like the Kenny years were a disaster. It takes about 8 years for people to clue in to the fact that they're being fleeced, right? Like, that's how slow the public is to actually respond to the crises that they vote for. Like, takes about 8 years. And in my experience, the smaller the population, the faster it takes. So, like, in Manitoba, Pallister had to resign. And had to resign for way less than stuff that Kenny was doing, and way less than what Ford was doing, right? Pallister resigns. Why? Because the people of Manitoba, right? There's not that many of them, first of all, right? And also, they're rural prairie folk, and they actually talk to one another, you know? To me, that's the biggest problem that we've got going on. Nobody's actually talking to each other. We're just creating little tribes. We're just creating little groups, right? We're not actually creating any form of communication. And the social media system seems designed to do that. And here I am participating in it. What can you do? What can you do? The neocons are 1 week closer to destroying the social programs in Europe. That's what's new. Well, I mean, you could basically say that every day, right? Like, that's their agenda. That's their whole plan. Yeah, I love quoting Bible verses at liberals and conservatives. It's freaking hilarious when they whine about immigrants and the poor. Yeah, like, the story of the Good Samaritan alone, right? Yeah, whoa, your bootlicking is too much even for us? Yeah, Liggins, good to see you, man. One thing you lack, sell all you have and give it to the poor, then come and follow me. Yeah. Like, and let's be clear, it's not Danielle Smith that's going to do the destroying, right? What do I say all the time, right? It's one thing I always got to bring it back to, and one thing I try to do with this show, and I think the thing that makes me stand out more than other commentators is that I'm not really willing to engage in the cult of personality aspect of it. I feel like the cult of personality aspect of it is a defense mechanism by the system itself. The real problem was Trump. The real problem was Trump. Right? Like, no, it isn't. The problem is the system itself that is generating figures like Trump. Right? And always has, by the way. This is one thing I've been listening to a lot of commentators recently who have been rightly pointing out that, like, Trump is not actually an aberration. If you go back and look through the history of America, right? Like, Trump is actually, like, his rise to power is a bit unique, right? But only as unique as the society as it stands, right? What with the power of social media, the power of television, all this kind of stuff. The power of the internet. So there are differences there. And so Trump's ascension is a little bit unique. But he as a figure is not that unique. His positions are not out of step with the history of the Republican Party. Right? It really not. Yeah, where are the anti-war voices? Now it's wrong to say I don't support war, period. Yeah. I mean, where are the anti-war voices? Like, I, for one, am against the war. Like, I'm against the war. When I comment on it, I try to comment on it with a historical perspective. But the truth is that I wish everybody would just put their weapons down and be done with it, right? Speaking of that, let's just plow in. We might as well. Let's get the channel demonetized. Let's go. If we're going to talk about it, we're going to talk about it, right? Some Chelsea Manning. Okay. Quick update before I move forward with this. I have to buy some headphones. Once I go and buy some headphones, I will be able to put headphones on and then play videos such as these, which you guys will be able to hear with no trouble whatsoever. And I'm also going to be moving towards doing a call-in aspect of the show. I want to start seeing if I can get... and that'll be really easy. I'll literally put a link to the Discord in the description. You guys will be able to come into the Discord. I'll see the list of people, and I'll be able to talk to you. Eric, blessing to see you, bud. I hope you're doing well out there. So things will improve, and we're gonna try to get a call-in aspect of the show tied in, and we'll see if that's gonna be any successful at all. The biggest story. The biggest story of what's going on in Ukraine, if you ask me, is that Russia is escalating its war efforts, let's say. Like, throughout this period of time, Russia has moved into Ukraine with a certain degree of delicacy, right? Like, it hasn't moved into Ukraine and operated the way that the West has operated, which the West is surprised by. When the Russians moved in, they didn't just level Kiev. They didn't just level cities. They weren't just indiscriminately destroying infrastructure wherever they went, right? It was obviously destructive. It's a military, but it wasn't indiscriminate. It wasn't the shock and awe pattern that the United States itself uses. So people were surprised by this. So everything that's been happening up until this point, up until literally, when did this happen? Literally Monday, right? Or Sunday, has been Russia moving steadily to claim its goals, right? moving delicately, trying to minimize damage to civilian infrastructure and civilian populations. That's how they have been operating. That's what they have been doing. And I consider that to just be to be an objective fact, that Russia did not just level cities, right? Well, looks like that's changing now. And that's changing because of the bombing of the bridge between Crimea and Russia. So let's Google Maps, Google Maps, Google Maps, Google Maps. Yep. Look, I said it. I don't know if I said it. I feel like I said it somewhere. Probably not here because I was sick. Boom, right? The Russians aren't just going to shrug and be like, well, I guess they blew up a bridge. Oh, well, looks like they blew up a bridge. Ha ha. Right? They're not just going to sit back and let that happen. Right? And the Russians have been extremely consistent about one thing. When they say they're going to do something, if you do something, when you do that thing, they do that thing. They are not bluffing. That the Russians have been telling the truth the entire time, right? That if you, like, they're literally standing there telling you, if you slap me, I'm going to grab your balls. And then you go, and then you slap them, they grab your balls. Like, maybe you don't like that they grabbed your balls. Maybe you're not happy about it, but they're not lying to you, right? You called their bluff and they had pocket aces, right? Like they're not bluffing. And when the Crimean Bridge was destroyed, along with the Nord Stream pipeline, by the way, right? The Russians are finally putting it together, right? They're finally saying to one another, okay, these Americans are not, given the current military position, given where we are right now in this military conflict, the Americans are simply not going to permit a negotiated peace, right? They're simply not going to permit it. And so now we, the Russians, need to escalate the destruction of Ukraine until it becomes obvious to the Ukrainian citizens themselves that if they want to get out of this, they're going to need to tell their leadership, negotiate a fucking peace. Because that's what it's come down to. Like, that's what it's come down to. That the West is so psychotic, is so absurd, is so ridiculous. The Russians have literally been trying to negotiate a peaceful resolution to this since, like, 2010. Like, since even before the coup, right? So at least since 2014, the Russians have been like, how do we negotiate a peaceful settlement? How do we sit down at the table and negotiate a peaceful settlement, right? The entire time they've been doing that. And to pretend like they haven't, I think is just baby-brained nonsense. I think you got to be out of your fucking mind. Like, the Russians do not want to be doing this. That they see it as a necessity, as an existential importance to the existence of their nation, right? It isn't, Putin's going in there and taking territory because he's a madman, he wants resources, oh my god, it's an imperial, like, they feel they need to do this because they have no alternative, because they've been given no alternative. That's the absolute truth of certainly the truth that the Russian citizens themselves believe, right? That if it was like Putin's a madman and he's off the rails and all this stuff, well, he's enjoying about 80% support within his own country, right? And the attitude of the Russian people is very much that this is unfortunate. We wish it wasn't so, but we're dealing with an existential threat that has to be dealt with. And now it looks as though the Russians have been begrudgingly pulled to escalating the war into much more serious territory. That now they're doing missile strikes, not on civilian appears to be solely civilian sites or key pieces of infrastructure, right? The country's electrical grid, these sorts of things, right? Like, they are going to escalate this in order to make the war hit the civilian population, because they have nothing else to do. Like, they have very little else that they can do. Like, the 200 to 300,000 troops that are coming into this region and being trained in this region, well, in Russia and being funneled into this region, may amount to some kind of large-scale invasion, especially because the Ukrainian military forces have been defeated and depleted, and the NATO forces are proving to be not ineffective, but certainly not capable of making major gains, right? So as this war continues, it's just going to mean Ukrainians are going to die. And they're going to die because the United States is sitting there being like, nah. Because at the end of the day, the U.S. is just a psychotic empire that doesn't give a fuck about the Ukrainians. They don't give a shit. Let them die. Like, that's the position of the American empire. They're dying for the glory of freedom in the West, and we're going to stand up against Putin and all that. Boy. Like, they don't give a fuck. They don't care. Let them die. As long as it means that Moscow is forced to build more missiles instead of improve their own roads. Right? As long as it means that Moscow has to build defense systems and take 300,000 people and funnel them in to military service instead of creating more engineers or creating more teachers or creating a more stable society. Like, this is literally the Americans' plan right now. The Americans' plan is to create a hostile environment for the Russians so that they have to restructure their economy and funnel money down the path of militarism instead of down the path of actually building a stable civil society. That's the Americans' like stated objective. Like, I'm not making that up. This isn't even me observing it. This is the Americans standing up and being like, yeah, our goal is to force Moscow to spend a lot of money on a wasteful war. That's what we want. Right? So that rather than being able to build more rail, rather than being able to build more trade routes, rather than it being able to connect itself better to the world around it, it's got to spend all of its time and money on bullets. Like, that's what they're doing. And the Ukrainians are just like, yeah, let's go. Let's ride. Let's fucking go. Right? Like, the Ukrainian population is, like, overwhelmingly against the idea of a negotiated peace that cedes territory. Right? Like, 80%. Like, the Ukrainians are not going to accept that kind of a thing. And so, the Russians are being like, oh, yeah, okay. You will eventually. You will eventually. Like, eventually you will just go, for fuck's sake, I want to live in a stable environment. I want to live in a place where there isn't this shit happening. I don't give a fuck about these territories. Fuck Donbass. I don't give a fuck. Right? I don't give a fuck if this region over here is part of Russia now. I don't give a fuck. I live in Kiev. Right? I live in Lviv. I live in these small towns. Right? I don't even go there. I don't even go over here. I don't even give a fuck. Fine, they're part of Russia. Just stop bombing our infrastructure. Stop destroying our society. Right? And that's like, but the hard reality is that that's not what people do. That's the theory, right? That's the theory, but that's not what actually people do, right? When people are under attack by an external force, they villainize and not, like, everything that I just said about Putin and everything that I do say about Putin, the Ukrainians don't give a fuck about any of that. All they see is bad man bomb me. And that's it, right? And it's hard to argue against that. It's hard to argue against this idea, right? Like, somebody's dropping bombs on me, I'm not going to sit back and be like, well, we have to take a look at the geopolitical environment in which... No, that's ridiculous. Like, if a Ukrainian were to call into my show and start saying... Like, if a Ukrainian living in Ukraine right now were to call in right now and talk to me and tell me that Putin was the next Hitler and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't contradict him, right? Like, they're speaking from a deeply emotional place, like a deeply emotional place, right? They're not sitting back and doing this geopolitical argument about like what's going on in the world stage and seeing the world as a grand chessboard and trying to move and align pieces in such a way so that there's any kind of like, no, none of that is happening. None of that is happening. And so my deep fear about how this is going to move forward is that the people of Ukraine are just going to double down on Nazism. That they're just going to double down on the overt, obvious fascism that has taken over their country. That they are going to look at a guy like Zelensky and say, okay, Zelensky was the guy that was in power when this all began, because to the vast majority of the Ukrainian people, the war didn't begin in 2014 in the Donbass region. The war began when the Russians invaded, right? And they're going to say, we should push aside Zelensky, who did a fine job, thank you, Mr. Zelensky, and elect a Nazi. Because there's going to be elections, and there's going to be a Nazi who's going to stand up and say, we have to be strong and powerful and unified against this Russian threat, and we have to... And you're going to see fucking Nazi salutes in the parliament. Before this is all over. Here, I don't like to do predictions very often, right? But this is a prediction. And maybe I'll be wrong. But before this is all over, there'll be Nazi salutes in the Ukrainian parliament. And when that happens, I can't wait for the Nazi agentia that comes out of our society. I can't wait for the Nazi apologetics, right? We've seen Nazi apologetics this entire time. We've seen Nazi apologetics about the Azov battalion this entire fucking time. I can't wait to see what these guys say when the Nazi salutes begin in the Ukrainian parliament. Hey. What are you guys saying? Did you also see the giant postal stamp where Kiev's citizens are taking photos of the stamp where it showed the bombing? No. General Armageddon is in charge of the Russian army now. He was experienced in Syria. Well, I mean, I think the Russians just thought that they were going to roll in there and Ukraine was going... Like, anytime I observe the Russians in war, it seems to me that the Russians expect a certain degree of rationality. And this goes all the way... This is like Stalin. I think about this about Stalin. I think Stalin absolutely assumed a certain degree of rationality out of Hitler and out of the Nazis. I think he assumed a certain degree of reasonable thinking. And they underestimate the petulant childishness of our leadership. That the capitalist system generates child leaders. And you end up with middle-aged men with the mental state of a 6-year-old in power. and they don't quite understand that. And they constantly underestimate the belligerence and pettiness and petulance of Western leaders, right? That from the Russian perspective, and it's pretty clear through the actions of what they did, that they thought that they were going to roll in there and Ukraine was going to go, whoa, 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 okay, whoa, we don't want this. We're going to stop now. Whoa, whoa. That's what they thought was going to happen. It's not what happened. Not what happened, right? And so now they're in this situation. And they've just been pushed to this point where it's like, okay, we got to do it. It seems to be what they're asking for. We don't want to, but here we are. Exactly. Ukraine had this bridge bomb prepared. A commemorative stamp of a war crime. Smart. Yeah, exactly. And Western media doesn't talk about the other attacks Ukraine had done on Russia's nuclear plant. Yeah, the attacks on the nuclear plant are like that shows you how psychotic. Like bombing a bridge is one thing, right? Like bombing a bridge is one thing. Like yeah, it's a war crime. Yeah, all this kind of stuff, right? Yep, right. Bombing a nuclear plant. These people are psychos. Like these people are like the society has gone psychotic, and there's just no other way to describe it. Like, your military forces are bombing a nuclear power plant. Like, it's over. The conversation's over, right? Your society has gone psychotic. And if you want something to be done about it, then maybe you should demand an end to this fucking conflict. Like, maybe get a guy in there that's actually like, yeah, we should probably sue for peace. Like, we should probably sue for peace. Actually, it's 76%. He lost 5%. If that's in regards to Putin, I mean, that's not surprising. The mobilization, right? The mobilization, again, like, it's necessary, but it's not popular, right? People aren't happy about it. And obviously, like, I wouldn't be happy about it. Like, but I think, again, the position of the Russian people is this sucks, but it must be done, and that is how they view it. Ukrainians are their darling Make-A-Wish kid angels. Yeah, I think what this all proves is that Russian washing machines are extremely powerful military weapons. I don't understand the comment, Grinning, but I'm glad that you made it. This is how Rome fell. Now America wants to go into Haiti. Yeah, I saw about this. Americans don't want to join the military, and maybe if they put their draft, we'll get the anti-war voices. Good to see you too, Rusty. Good to see you. Oh, I can feel. I'm still at like 80%. I can feel it right in my voice right here. It's like right here, right now. It's like, and down in here a little bit. I think I'm gonna make it all the way today. We'll see. I'm rooting for me. No, I mean, it's beyond stretching themselves too thin, Kat. It's like the Americans are acting the way that they're acting because they're desperate. They don't know what else to do, right? They have no theory about how to move forward successfully and build a strong, stable, successful society. That their theory literally has been for 100 years, if not more. Their theory has literally been, we're the greatest. God gave us a manifest destiny to own the world, right? And the best way to organize the society is to give all the money to rich people who will then control the society because daddy loves us, right? It's like major daddy issues. And so we're living in this like rising neo-feudalism where there's a divine rights of king sort of situation. And instead of taking our money and our time and our energy and putting it into building a strong power grid, building a strong rail system, building infrastructure, creating a public society that's worth living in and gives a lot of benefits to the people who are spawning into the society. Instead of doing all of that, we spent all our money on war. War. Right? War. That's what we're doing. Right? That this is where the civilized people live. The rest of this is war, right? This is just where war is done. And if you're doing all of that, right, you're not building a society. You're not doing anything. And it's so much worse than we could possibly imagine, because now we're in a position where the idea isn't working, right? The idea of what has been behind the American empire isn't working, and there is no counter narrative. Because the empire has done everything it could to destroy the counter-narrative. Like, I am literally the counter-narrative. Like, that's how desperate things have gotten. That's how desperate we are. Right? That I am the counter-narrative. And we are living in this period of time where all of our resources are going into war. Meanwhile, other countries, right? China's a good example of this. They understand that, oh no, the thing to do is to build infrastructure, is to build a stable society, is to attempt to get resources into your borders and then equalize and distribute those resources, right? And make it so that when people spawn into the society, they spawn into a stable society that's worth living in, right? So the Americans, all they know how to do is pick a fight. All they know how to do is try to steal resources. They don't know how to negotiate for resources. They don't know how to create trade alliances. All they've ever done is kick in the doors, shoot everybody in the building, and steal all their stuff. That's all they've ever done. And it's not going to work. Eventually, they're going to try to kick in some doors, and they're going to get shot. And it's happening more and more and more, until eventually the entire system is just going to break down. And here's where it gets like really terrifying from my perspective. When the entire system breaks down, who's going to actually have control of all these toys? Right? All these battle cruisers and nuclear bombs. Like, jump 100 years into the future when I'm dead and there's like a whole new generation of kids. Right? And it's just new people. Who has control of all of this? Who has control of all of this hardware? All of these battleships? All of these fucking nuclear submarines? All this kind of crazy shit. Right? Meanwhile, the entire fucking union is probably going to smash apart. Like, it's just going to be a fucking disaster of a mess. It's just going to be a fucking disaster of a mess. And anybody who has any sense in their brains at all, like, if I'm China, I am just building internal force. I'm expecting some of this shit to blow up in my face. I'm expecting it, right? Because I don't see how you couldn't, right? But it's just build internal force, build internal security apparatus. Just make yourself strong. And that's what Xi Jinping is doing, no doubt. Like, no doubt. God, I haven't talked like this in a week, and so now I feel like I'm like really going to town. The thing that I find laughable is the West keeps saying that Russia is running out of ammo. Yeah, based on what evidence? Especially consider they still have their manufacturing capacity. Yeah, exactly. Like, while the Russian oligarchs definitely engaged in like offshoring and all that to a certain degree, like the Russians aren't going to run out of ammo. What are you talking about? Like that's just baby brain shit. Yeah. Yeah, he's calling the nuke. Yeah, the nuking of Russia. Yeah, the nuclear element, eh? The nuclear element just makes this so great. Like, the Russian nuclear armament is in high alert. Like, it is ready to go literally at the press of a button. Like, you don't get more high stakes than this. And the idea that the Americans aren't backing down under these circumstances, like, we're just dealing with total fucking psychos. But yeah, the Yukis are already whitewashing what happened in 2014, saying they were throwing off Russian influence. Yeah, because this is like a throwback to what people would say about... people would actually say to me when I would confront them about the idea that Canadians have been funding and arming Nazis in Ukraine, right? They would be like, well, that's fine. It's fine to fund Nazis because they're fighting Russians. Right? So as long as they're our Nazis, that's fine. Completely forgetting, like, the basic central plank of what I always say about negotiating with Nazis. You don't use Nazis. Nazis use you. Right? That there is no such thing as an actual alliance with Nazis. Because they will go with you as far as they find you valuable. And the moment you are not valuable and you are hindering them, they will shoot you. Like, like, why would you ever think that arming, training, and aiding Nazis is anything but a completely disastrous idea? Just a completely disastrous idea. Colin, I'm at 80%. I'm at 80%. I think I'm going to make it through today's show. Thank you for your concern. I appreciate it. The U.S. thinks that Russia will be a pushover. Personally, I think maybe the way Russians are portrayed in anime is more accurate. I don't think the Americans thought Russia would be a pushover, but I definitely, like, to me, the thing is that the Americans don't actually have a horse in the game. Not a legitimate one, right? Like, for America and for the American citizens, this doesn't matter. Like straight up. If it wasn't for the like big explosion of news and oh my god, the headlines and the blue and the yellow and stand with Ukraine and oh my god and all that kind of stuff, which by the way all went away when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, because that's how Americans are. We've got the memory of a fucking goldfish, right? It's literally like Ukraine and Russia and all that kind of stuff and oh my god, did you see what happened? Like that's literally how we are. And nobody gives a fuck about Ukraine anymore. Nobody gives a shit. There's like this small niche component of people who will tune into shows like mine, right? And we'll talk about it, right? But for the average citizen, like they got their blue and yellow flag and that's kind of it. It's just sort of in the background of their lives now and they don't care. Because it's over there. It's like across the entire world. It's not like the Russians or the Chinese are off the coast of Florida or something, right? Like, it's not like there's actually a real existential threat, right? It's not like something that you can see or something that you can, like, it lives in an abstraction. And that abstraction is separated from the reality of your life by a layer of propaganda and media and television and Marvel movies, right? That you're just like... So, yeah, Ukraine war, Putin's the next Hitler, that's bad. I'm gonna eat a Big Mac. I gotta get to work on time. Oh my god, I can't believe, did you hear that Chris Rock got slapped by Joe? I can't even believe it. Like, that's what's going on in people's normal everyday life, right? That is not the case for the Russians, right? For the Russians, they are dramatically aware of the threat of what is happening here. They are dramatically aware of it. If you live in Moscow, the war is here. Bump, 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 bump. Like, if you can drive to it in less than a day, you are affected by it on a day-to-day basis. Like, when the leadership of Moscow, when Putin and all these guys stand up and start talking about the war to the public, they're not talking about some fucking abstraction that's over there that doesn't matter. Nobody is coming to America to destroy anything. It's not on the table. It is not possible. If the Chinese and the Russians simultaneously took all of their naval power and tried to throw it against California, they wouldn't make it out of here. All of that would be blown away, and we all fucking know that's the truth. It would be an epic naval battle, and the Chinese and the Russians would lose their naval power, and we know it. They know it. Everybody fucking knows it. So the Americans are sitting there, fat on their couches, eating their goddamn Big Macs, being like, yeah, stand with Ukraine! Yeah, stand with Ukraine! We should definitely give another $1 billion to Ukraine! Yeah, definitely! And then they look at their paychecks and they're like, this isn't gonna pay my rent! And they wonder what the fuck's going on, right? For the Russians are sitting there, going, I live in Moscow, right? The most populous city in Russia. There's the fucking war right there, right? We get stories of bombs getting lobbed at these little things right fucking here. So when the Russian leadership stands up and says, if you roll a tank, if you take a foot past this line, we will fucking nuke you. The Russians go, you're goddamn fucking right. You're goddamn fucking right. And that's the difference. The difference is between somebody who sees a looming giant on the distance, like a literal golem titan, just standing on their border, staring with an eye of Sauron directly into their soul, just petting a nuclear bomb and going, I could do it at any moment. I could do it at any moment. And on the other side of that is just a fat, illiterate Floridian sitting on a couch with VR goggles being like, this game is hard! That's the fucking difference. Like, the stakes are so much fucking different. The stakes are so much fucking different. Like, I can't even begin to express. Oh, yeah. Normal society. Not Nazis. Not Nazis. No Nazism in Ukraine, guys. No fucking Nazism in Ukraine. Normal society. Normal society. Right, and so to tie it into what you're saying, Grinning, like, the Russians aren't going to be a fucking pushover. Like, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. These people are arming themselves, are prepared for war, and are prepared for the consequences of what is happening, because not only because they're not seeing it through the lens of a propaganda network. That's the biggest thing that I can't stress to you guys enough. Yes, Moscow has propaganda. Yes, they're spreading propaganda. Okay, absolutely, they're doing that. That normal should be completely expected. You're an idiot if you're standing there being like, Russian propaganda. Yeah, of course. Like, of course. What are we, babies? The Russian people can walk to the front line. Like, I'm sorry, there's literally no amount of propaganda that you can funnel into a society that will countervene what people can see with their own fucking eyes when they walk to the front line. When soldiers retreat back 2 hours and you talk to them and they tell you what they've seen. Like, the detachment that the average Westerner is experiencing in this regard is so extreme it can barely be expressed. Like, we do not know what is happening at all. 0%. The Russians? Yeah, the war is right there. Like, if I stand on this building, I can actually see the war. Like, Americans gotta grow up, man. They gotta fucking grow up. They're not gonna. Like, they're not gonna. But they gotta. I love it. I haven't seen Lonnie in like a month. She comes in. Elon Musk is a tool. Thanks, Lonnie. I appreciate you. I value your participation in all of this. This is straight up just some Nazi shit right here, dude. Are you fucking kidding me with this? Fuck off. I love it that you guys are just like throwing names in the fucking chat. Like, I know who the fuck you're talking about. Damian Wayne. Why are we talking about Damian Wayne? Literally Robin? No, I'm moving on from this. This is a rabbit hole. Yeah, Elon Musk still acts like he has control of Starlink and it's not controlled by the military. Yeah, Elon Musk is a fucking doofus. Like, just a doofus. Like, it is interesting. It is interesting that Elon Musk recently did come out and say on Twitter that we should negotiate a peaceful settlement. And essentially that we should negotiate a peaceful settlement that is essentially the secession of the Donbass and Crimea. It's essentially just the Russians have this territory. They own this territory. We should secede. And I understand why the leftist community likes to dunk on Elon Musk, because he's a fucking toolbox. But he was right. Like, he was right. And it's interesting to see how liberals, I shouldn't say leftists, but liberals, respond to someone like Elon Musk standing up and saying, like, yeah, we should probably do that. Like, that should probably happen. Is that the liberal response is basically like, Elon Musk is now a Russian stooge. Russian propaganda. Like, what's going to be crazy to see, guys? Like, it's so fucking weird what's going to happen, right? Is that the Republicans are going to win in America, right? They're going to win. They're going to seize power. And they're probably going to negotiate a peace in Ukraine. That's fucking crazy, right? Like, domestically, America is going to fall into fascism. Like, America is going to fall into an internal fascism, no doubt. The security apparatus is going to clamp down on the country domestically. But internationally, The Republicans may literally just be like, yeah, what are we spending money on that? What is this about? Get the fuck out of here. Right? Just listen to Trump. Just listen to Trump. I follow Trump on TikTok. You know what he says about Ukraine? What are we doing? What are we doing here? This is a bad deal. It's a bad idea. It's stupid warmongering going on for the Democrats. We gotta get out of Ukraine. And what does he get called for saying that? He's a Putin puppet. He's a Kremlin, and the Russians helped him steal the election. It's what a fucking crazy world we live in. What a fucking crazy world we live in. Yeah. Though Russia is certainly hitting some civilian infrastructure, it's not the same careless, random way as NATO shock and awe. Yeah. Well, it seems Ukraine directly attacks civilians as the point. I mean, no, nothing will ever match. I shouldn't say that. Like, we are still the inheritors of, like, the Roman Empire, right? That we still are of that quality of people. Like, there was a period in Western history and in Western civilization where we literally were crucifying people publicly. Like literally 10,000 people all at once, nailing them to planks, erecting them and posting them for all to see in the public sphere. That's who we are. Those are our ancestors. This is the great Western civilization that we're all supposed to be like, Western civilization. Like, get completely fucked. Get completely fucked. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Jackson, Mississippi. Ukraine needs another $999 billion, yeah. Russian subs are pretty good. They get close to USA. I mean, then it's Taiwan. Dude, the Taiwan situation just cannot... It just keeps getting stupider. It just keeps getting stupider. Yeah, Trump will go after China. Well, and we know that's true. Like, I'd be surprised if Trump went after China militarily, though. Like, Trump's first term, he really didn't want to start new conflicts. Like, one thing that I think Trump understands a little bit better than the Democrats understand is that trade is peace. And for there to be trade, you need to have peace. Like, you can't simultaneously bomb a people and trade with those people. Like, that's just not how it's going to work. Right? You get ads here about 75% of the time? Hey, somebody's got to pay this. If you're getting ads, that means I'm getting a little bit of money, so don't complain too much. Yeah, we're the savages. We go to peaceful nations and bring death and destruction. Yeah, oh yeah, that's all we've ever done. We've never done anything else. And, like, I think the most amazing propaganda that happens in the United States is the idea that everything we have we built because capitalism is innovation. That capitalism is innovation, right? Like, that is just bonkers. That is just bonkers bullshit. That if you have even a cursory understanding of the history of the United States from any perspective other than George Washington was the king god, right? Like, if you take the position of the black population, if you take the position of the First Nations population, if you take the position of the Vietnamese or the Laotians, the Cambodians or the Chinese, if you take anyone else's position for any amount of time and look at the United States from outside of the United States, it becomes obvious that the reason why the United States built what it has is because of slavery, genocide, and war. It's pretty clearly the case. And that any of the positive elements that we have within the society exist in spite of our desire and proclivity to do that, not because of it. Not because of it. Wow. Apparently, Tsai Ing-wen has been scared shitless, is now moving toward peaceful resolution with Beijing. Taiwan is doing the thing Ukraine should have been doing. I hope so. I fucking hope so. Like, the major difference, and it is not an insignificant difference between because there are parallels, obviously, between the Taiwan situation and the Ukrainian situation, right? There are parallels, but the major difference is that Taiwan isn't infested with Nazis. That makes it very helpful, right? That makes it very helpful. Because I think that the major issue that's going on in this area is that there are fucking Nazis. And Zelensky has no power, right? He's just like this figurehead. And essentially, like, to me, it's not difficult at all to imagine, like, Nazis coming into Zelensky's office and saying, this is what we're going to do, and if you don't like it, we will shoot you. Like, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, right? Like, what's Zelensky gonna do? If his military says this is what we're gonna do, what's Zelensky gonna do? Like, really? And so Zelensky ends up just being a stooge, just like a figurehead, because the real power of what's going on in Ukraine is obviously the people with the guns. That situation's not happening in Taiwan. Right? The citizenry of Taiwan is relatively stable, right? Relatively peaceful, not interested in a conflict of any sort, generally trusts its leadership. There's a certain degree of cohesion, right? There isn't the same kind of, like, they don't despise the Chinese, right? Like, the Ukrainians despise the Russians. But the Taiwanese don't despise the Chinese. Not in the same way, not to the same degree. And so, here's a situation where, like, oh, hey, look, here's a country that has a long-standing history with its neighbor, and NATO has come in, and now look at the situation of what's happening. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out, oh, those exact same parallels are occurring here. And when Nancy Pelosi landed in, right? Do you know what happened? Do you know what happened? Like, it pays to remember what happened. The Chinese ran aquatic tanks. Tanks that are capable of crossing the Strait of Taiwan. And ran hundreds of them along the beaches right through here. They did drills in all of the regions around Taiwan. They did flyovers of Japan, right? They ran extensive military drills to show the leadership of Taiwan, this is what this means. I hope it scared them straight. I hope that they stood up, took a look at the overt, obvious betrayal that NATO is perpetrating against the Ukrainians, the enormous betrayal, the complete usage of Ukraine as a pawn in a proxy war, the destruction of Ukraine, and I hope the Taiwanese go, oh, fuck, yeah, we can't trust these guys. Like, straight up, we can't trust these guys, right? You know what we have never experienced from the Chinese? You know what we've never experienced from the Chinese? Right? That you got to go back to literally like World War II times. We've never experienced the wholesale destruction of our country with the Chinese. Maybe we should just trade with these guys. Maybe we should just stop trying to do this two-side kind of thing. Because if the choice is between a stable country that is directly on our fucking coast, right? Directly off our coast. Like, you can literally stand on the coast of Taiwan and look across and there's fucking China, right? And if the choice is between appeasing this, right, or dealing with a country that obviously will betray you, just skip to the good part, guys. Right? Just skip to the chase. Skip to the good part. Just cut to the chase. Let's go. Start trading with China. Say goodbye to the West. When the West shows up at your doorstep, be like, it is better for us if we no longer communicate. Because guess what? It is. Like, it is. It just is. And anything else, like anything else, You're just destroying your own citizens for no reason and no purpose. Like, if you want your country to be destroyed, go ahead and elect a comedian. Go ahead and elect a comedian. See where that fucking gets you. Correct, Adam. Trump bombed more than Obama did and more than Biden has, and that's good for you to say. He didn't start new conflicts. That's very specifically what I was trying to say. That you are right, that when it came to militarism within the field of war and the field of battle that already existed, that he inherited, that he was given, he was just as willing to do that kind of stuff. Absolutely. And also unwilling to pull out of places like Afghanistan. Also unwilling to do that kind of stuff because it would make him look weak. Absolutely. But he didn't start new conflicts. Right? Like, I think that's fundamentally true. That if it was up to him exclusively, I think that he would be like, this is fine. Like, let's not... Whoa. Like, why are we opening up new frontiers of warfare? Like, we've got enough. Right? We should be opening up new frontiers of trade. That's what Trump wanted to do, right? But of course, he wants to open up trade with Russia, and so he's a Putin stooge, right? And please do not mistake me. I'm not sitting here being like, Trump is good. Like, no. Like, no. But there are things, like, you've got to acknowledge when things happen. Yeah, if I were Tsai Ing-wen and I'm watching how the West is using Ukrainians as fodder, I'd be trying to get peace as well. Yeah. And, like, this odd sort of in-between space that the Taiwanese find themselves, it can't and won't sustain itself. It's just not going to go down that way. Right? That Taiwan is at some point going to have to decide that there will be ultimatums. Like, it will happen. And the leadership of Taiwan needs to be very aware. And it needs to know which way it's got to jump. And it's got to know what it's going to sacrifice in order to get there. And you take a look at Ukraine, and it knows exactly what it's going to sacrifice. And so it would prefer not to. That fundamentally, the choice between Taiwan is to become a floating aircraft carrier for the Americans to launch attacks into China, while China does everything it can to basically just flatten it, right? But it's an unsinkable aircraft carrier. Or it can become a base for China to exert its pressure outside. Like, and let's make no two ways about it, guys. That's exactly what's happening. That Taiwan is basically choosing which way the aircraft carrier points itself. Which way the planes are going to fly. That what China wants to do and what America want to do is put an air base right fucking here. Don't fucking pretend otherwise. Don't pretend otherwise. Right? Now, the Chinese want to do it so that they can exert control of the East China, South China, and the Philippine Sea. Right? That's why they want to do it. So that they can secure their trade routes, so that if Americans come in and try to blow it up and all that kind of stuff, they can actually respond and do that kind of stuff. And it's also just extremely useful from a geopolitical, like a geographical location. Right? That they're not thinking, we're going to do this and then we're going to launch big attacks into Japan and South Korea. Like, that's not the way they're thinking of it. Whereas the Americans are like, yeah, we'll put an airbase there and then we can fucking drop bombs all over China. Doesn't take a genius to figure out which way I think the Taiwanese are going to jump. Honestly, you don't believe that the CIA and the military-industrial complex won't do the same to Biden or Trump? Yeah, they want war. It's their only export. I think the major difference, right, is that Biden has always been part of that mechanism, right? And so there's a clear continuity of his thinking. That when the CIA and when the military generals come into his office, He shakes their hands and say, what are we going to do today, gentlemen? Right? Whereas Trump had a degree of skepticism, right? And still has a degree of skepticism. Like, I don't think he views the CIA and the FBI and the military as necessarily a positive force, right? Like, Trump has a very, like, libertarian mode of thinking, right? Like, he sees his little empire, Trump empire, as its own independent kind of thing, and then beside it is the CIA, and beside that is this, and beside that is this, and that these are all up for negotiation, right? Like, that's the big difference, is that I think Biden is more of a partner, whereas I think Trump is just, like, he's just negotiating it, right? Like, that to me is the major difference between those two figures. And, like, when it comes down to it, Trump's going to go along with the CIA, because eventually the CIA will just be like, look, bro, we can make your life hard. Like, we can make your life hard if you want. Do you want us to make your life hard? We'll make your life hard. Right? And Trump will go, nah, I don't want you to make my life hard. And the CIA will be like, then fucking give us what we want. And Trump will go like, yeah, okay, I'll give you what you want. Just leave me alone. And that's what's going to happen. Like, I saw a video of Trump coming out where he said Europe needs to stop getting oil from Russia, but from the States. Yeah, of course Trump's going to say that. Give me money. That's basically what he just said. Yeah, Europe needs to stop getting its oil from Russia and instead give me money. That's basically all he's saying. Yeah, the USA is gouging Europe, and no media covering the backlash. The Chancellor of Germany is under extreme pressure to stand up and say no war. Yeah. Like, I'm really looking forward to going through this winter with you guys. This winter is going to be incredible. It's going to be an incredible winter. What's going to happen in Germany and France and Spain and the UK and Italy, Austria, like all these places, right? It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. No one will ever tolerate this, and no one should, right? You're telling me that for generations now, we have built a society where over the winter there has been heat, we've had supply chains, we've had all that kind of stuff, and then in the space of what appears to the average citizen of only a few years, all of that is going to fall apart? No one's going to tolerate this. No one's going to tolerate this. The cultural backlash alone. And if you want to see some spectacular, amazing shit that's happening right now in Europe, you guys got to start tuning in to what the UK is pumping out on its comedy shows. That, like, they're not fucking around. That the comedians that are coming out of London right now are literally saying what I am saying. That they literally sound like they're ringing the bell in the way that I am ringing the bell. And no one's stopping them. Right? There's no system of censorship that's occurring on this same degree. That when a panel discussion happens, right? When a panel discussion happens in North America, what do you see? Right? You have a liberal, a conservative, and a fascist. That's the panel discussion. The panel discussions that are happening in the UK are now a conservative, a liberal, and a communist. And the communists are making these two look like babies, because they are. And the reason why it's happening is because the citizens are no longer tuning in. And why are they not tuning in? Because they're sick and tired of listening to what the fascists have to say. Same thing's happening over here, by the way. Like, we're tuning out. And the reason why we're tuning out of that and we're tuning into people like me is because people like me are willing to stand up and at least acknowledge that shit's gone wrong. And when that shit starts to happen throughout Europe, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy to watch. It's going to be hard on us as well. Just watch. Well, it's going to be a different phenomenon, or not different, but like we should pay close attention to what happens in Europe, because what happens in Europe is going to be reflected here in Canada and the United States. To me, that's actually the brilliance of Pierre Poilievre's campaign. That Pierre Poilievre's campaign is actually extremely in tune with what is happening across Europe. It is extremely in tune to what is happening in Europe. And it is using the rhetoric and using that ideas and using these concepts in its own campaign, merging it with the classic neoliberal Milton Friedman-esque talking points in order to appeal to a working class that is highly anxious that what is going to happen in Europe is going to come here as well. And that's why they're being so successful. And they'll continue to be successful. And when I talk to liberals and NDPers, the only conclusion that I can make is that they are detached from what is happening around them. That the NDP, like if you go in like the NDP forums and if you go talk to NDPers, right? These people are genuinely saying that we've got to talk about gun reform and that should be the election issue. Like these people are detached from what is happening to the average citizen. They're detached from the reality that people are struggling to pay their grocery bills. Rent is skyrocketing. No one can buy a house. Like these people are steadily detaching themselves from what is actually going on. And genuinely believe that talking about it is going to alienate people into the Conservative Party instead of exactly the opposite. That the reason why the Conservatives are gaining strength in this country is because they are talking about it. And they're funneling people into dead-end neoliberal solutions, right? Solutions that are not solutions. But through the power of acknowledging the struggle of the working class, and the just inflation, by the way, like the NDPers are laughing at that. They think that that's childish, when it's one of the most effective campaign strategies in living memory. And if you're an NDP type out there going, oh, just inflation, don't they understand? Don't they understand that it's a global phenomenon? Don't they understand that it's not in Justin Trudeau's control? Oh, these conservatives, they're so dumb, and so they just need to pay better attention and get educated. You're gonna get killed. You're gonna get killed in the next election, dude. Like it's not gonna be close. It's not gonna be close. Like, we saw it happen here in Ontario. That a dumb, illiterate, moronic, fat boob like Doug Ford completely steamrolled the competition. Completely steamrolled them. And walked not only to a majority government, but to a stronger majority government. After the most disastrous leadership in the history of Ontario. Literally, you can't find worse. Like, you can't find worse. Mike Harris comes close. And all of that, and the reason why that happens is because the NDP are sitting there being like, aren't people going to read our 50-page document? Don't they understand that we have policies and the... No! The average citizen is living in the world. The average citizen does not have the time, the energy, the emotional stability, or the proclivity and ability to be able to read your fucking 50-page document. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And the average citizen who didn't vote in the last election said the reason why they didn't vote is because I didn't see a difference between these guys. Like, how is this not a massive, major, extreme wake-up call for the NDP? And meanwhile, the NDP is standing around, walking around, being like, well, we're going to put in dental care for kids under the age of 12 in 2056. You know, like, people can't pay for their fucking groceries. People can't pay for their fucking groceries. Like, come on. Come on. Pierre Poilievre is going to walk away with this election. Like, he's going to walk away with it. And he's doing it because he's being extremely precise and his rhetoric is on point. It's wrong, but it's on point. I think the strongest piece of rhetoric that Pierre Poilievre is using right now is his turn to blame the government, right? It's perfect. Like, it's the perfect rhetorical tool right now. The government is the problem, right? Classic conservative point. The government is the problem, right? Because the liberals and the NDPers can't actually rebut it. Because the rebuttal is, government's the problem, who owns the government? Who's paying for the government? Who owns the government? Oh, it's the same people who own the private companies, right? So Galen Weston, the Irvings, David Thompson, right? Those guys are the ones that own the politicians. Well, the NDP and the Liberals can't say that. Why? Because they're owned by those guys. And they're not going to out their owners. So this frees up. This frees up Poilievre to just stand up and say, the true problem of what's happening here in Canada is government and the government intervention. And what we need to do is get government out of the business of the working class. Very fucking effective. It's very, very fucking effective. And Michel Rempel to Garnier to Trudeau, enough with this woke shit. Especially because guess what? The culture war is over. The Conservatives won. I hate to break it to you guys, right? If you actually think that the woke side of that conversation is winning, you're in for a fucking, like, that war ended with the repeal of Roe v. Wade. Like, the repeal of Roe v. Wade was the end of the war. I really fucking hate to break it to everybody. Like, the conservatives and the Republicans and the right-leaning fascists, right, in the society, they are more than willing to decimate you economically. They're more than willing to do that kind of shit. And if all you're going to do is confront them on culture war issues and woke levels, right? At this stage, if that's the only front that you're going to fight on, then they're just going to bat you aside with a sneer. Because that's what they're doing. That's all of Peterson, Shapiro, Crowder, right? These billionaire-backed frauds. That's all they're doing right now. And you can throw everything you want at them and fight that culture war all you want, and all they will do is sneer at you. Because that's all they need to do. Why? Because they've got the money. And unless you're actually going to fight along economic lines using science and evidence, you know, Marxist-Leninism, right? Or Marxism. If you're not going to actually observe what's real in the society and fight along economic lines, then all you're ever going to get is sneers. That's what's happening. And the rise of the manosphere, there's this rising manosphere that's coming up, right? This kind of pseudo-fascist, right? Grouping of just random dudes that are coming together on the internet and rising up. Like, they're not going to shut up. They're not just going to lay down, right? And not surprisingly, Who's going to get the biggest voice in the conversation? The person with the most money. And if the person with the most money sees that it's useful to take these men and pit them against women and have a woke conversation, battle of the sexes, while they sit back and say, okay, but show up to work on time, then they're definitely going to do it. Then they're definitely going to do it. Adam is saying, I don't get it. Seems Pierre doesn't care about inflation at all. He keeps saying that it's just inflation, like as if it doesn't matter. What's up with that? No, just inflation. Come on, bud. Adam, is this a joke? Are you joking? I hope you're joking, bud. Because it's a pun. It's just inflation, right? Just inflation. It's actually very clever. It's very, very clever. Because it's clever because even if it's inaccurate, which it is, but even if it is, it's memorable. It's a slogan. People remember it. It's something that people, like, the truckers in coffee shops will use as a shorthand. They'll just be like, just inflation. It's brilliant. Thanks, Adam. Thank you. You scared me for a minute there, bud. Transylvanian, how you doing? The centrists today are fascism enablers, just like they were in Weimar Germany, because all of their opposition, fight, and repression only goes one way, namely towards anything genuinely leftist. Yep, that's right. Also, I find that the I'm a centrist, right? The self-declaration of I'm a centrist is itself an act of protectionism, right? It's an act of self-delusion, first of all, right? You're deluding yourself. Like, there's no real two ways about that. Like, if you're walking around saying I'm a centrist, you're deluded. First and foremost, right? There is no such thing as centrism anymore. Centrism is gone. If I pull out a gun and point it at somebody's head, at let's say your daughter's head, and say, I'm going to pull the trigger, what's the centrist position? There isn't one. There isn't a centrist position. You're either, yeah, shoot my daughter in the head, in which case you're either insane or a Nazi, right? Or you're like, no, do not shoot my daughter in the head, in which case you're like a normal fucking person, right? But if somebody stood up and said, whoa, guys, we need to find a compromise. There's got to be a situation in which all parties can walk away from this situation happy. Well, you're allying yourself to the guy holding the gun. That's what you're doing. And in a society that is abandoning its own citizens, that is disconnecting itself from the plight of the poor, that is generating poverty, that is generating homelessness, that is generating these crises, not to mention the climate change crisis, there is no centrist position. And people who are going to stand up and say that they're centrists should be confronted about it. We should not allow someone to self-declare themselves a centrist. Because in this environment, in this political environment, centrism is simply indistinguishable from fascism. That if you're going to say, I'm a centrist, all you're saying is, I don't care if the fascists win. It doesn't matter to me if the fascists win. That is what you are saying. So there's no such thing as centrism. The culture wars have done their job. They've divided the left, put a bigger wedge between working class people. Well, and also, and I think this is very important, they've co-opted the legitimate cultural grievances that exist. Like, where the culture wars have found themselves now, right, where it is now, is essentially just men and women are struggling to interact with one another. And that shit's been going on for thousands of years, right? There are men and there are women, and they deal with one another, right? Like, the battle of the sexes. You can literally read old Grecian plays about this. Like, men and women and the conflicts that they have with one another in the negotiation of having sex, right? And propagating the species. right? Nothing new there. The difference now is that it's being politicized. It's entering the political realm, right? And this is not how the culture war began, right? That when the culture war begins, it begins because of slavery. Like that's the true beginning of the American culture war, is the history of slavery and the history of genocide. And so what the capitalists have done is they've taken all of they instead of woke being a leftist term to describe an individual who understands who is conscious of the existence of imperialism, right? That's what woke used to mean. That an individual who is woke understood the legacy of imperialism, slavery, and genocide. That's what it meant to be woke. But now that term has been co-opted to mean somebody who hates men. I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant the way that they did it and the way that it's worked, right? That get people away from understanding imperialism, the mechanism of capitalism, which is that there's an ownership class and an owned class. Get people away from that and start getting them to say, girls are stupid. Because that's basically what's happened. That's basically what's happened. The manosphere is essentially a bunch of dudes just going like, women. You know what women don't get? This is what women don't get. That's it. It's just a bunch of fucking Archie bunkers sitting in their dumb chairs being like, women are making things so difficult for us these days. Women are crazy. They don't know what they're doing. They're all over the place. Women's standards are too high, Why won't a woman go for a guy like me? I think it's a ridiculous situation. That's what's happened. That's the joke. And so the NDP and the Liberals, they just got to abandon ship on this. But they won't. Because the only other safe port of harbor, the only other battleground for them to take is Marxism. Straight up. It's material analysis, historical analysis, right? And to say, look, people are in poverty, and they're in poverty because there's an ownership class that owns people who are suppressing their wages. That's what's happening. But they can't do that. Why? Because they're owned by those people. So, we're just going to see a conservative party win. The culture war is very much also about LGBTQ issues, right? It's not just men, women. Dave Chappelle, J.K. Rowling. I would have agreed with that 5 years ago. But, what's manifesting into the culture wars now is a bunch of men standing up and saying, yeah, shut up about all that. That's essentially what it is now for the LGBTQ and all that kind of stuff. It's just, oh God, shut up about it. That's essentially what they're saying. And what the men want to talk about now is, why can't I get my dick sucked? I really hate to break this to you, straight up, the culture war is no longer if you start to get into that trans, and take a look at how your Shapiros and Crowders and all these guys are talking about the trans issue, right? It's all about this kind of incredulism and this sort of absurdist bullshit that they just shove in and say, basically, shut up about it. It's ridiculous. Take a look at a figure like Matt Walsh, who's literally a fascist, calls himself a fascist, right? Walking around basically lying about what's happening. Right? And at the end of the day, men are so fucking exhausted with this shit that they're just pushing it aside and just being like, look, I can't have sex. What's going on? It must be women. Certainly has nothing to do with the systemic oppression of both men and women, exhausting them, putting them through their paces so they can't ever find a foundation upon which to operate from to even have the basic communication required in order to have sex. No, the problem must be the woman. Right? Like, if I could sit down with any of these manosphere guys, that's 100% what I would say. I would just be like, yeah, like, of course you guys are struggling to interact with women. They're exhausted. Like, they're working just as hard as you are. Right? Like, the system of capital has exhausted everybody. And instead of pointing your finger at the person who's exhausting all of you, you're pointing at the finger at the object of your desire. And saying, oh, I don't like that you're so exhausted. You should not be so exhausted. Well, tough shit. Like, tough shit. It's grow up time, man. Like, it's time to start to pay attention to what if these manosphere guys actually gave a shit about the women that they profess to care about, the objects of their sexual desires, right? Well, they would be trying to solve the problem that these women have. And the number one problem that women have is capitalism. Without a doubt. And so to not focus on the system of capital, but instead focus on what your dick is pointing at, just tells me that you're a baby. Like, time to grow up. And, like, the culture war is about LGBTQ, but not in a nice way. Like, not in a nice way at all. That the dicks are talking now. Like, that's the long and short of it. That the men have walked into the room with their dicks out and are saying, why can't we get our dicks sucked? And if LGBTQ people stand up, they're basically saying, no. No. And the hard truth is that given the upsurgence of fascism and given the upsurgence of this sexual rage that is coming out of men, they're 100% going to point at the, like, if it comes down to it, they will point at the LGBT community and they will start smashing it. They absolutely will start smashing it. Like, that's a big part of this game. Right? Always try to find a scapegoat for the public. Always try to find a scapegoat. Right? If you can get men to scapegoat women for their problems, then you get to sit on your pile of gold. And if you can get men to go after gay people or trans people, you're golden. And if all of that's not working, we'll have those men and maybe the women go after the Jews. That works out fine. Anything that you can point at, and have the public turn its Sauron eye gaze upon, and funnel its gaze and funnel its rage into, as long as it's not you, the one sitting atop the pile of gold, that you're going to do it. Like, you're going to do it. For sure. And that's exactly where the culture war has found itself. And it has in its hands right now a very effective and powerful tool, which is men's desire for sex. We have a very childish perspective of sex in this society. The way that we view it is inverted. Like, you guys know me. Most of how we think about things is completely inverted. And our childish view of sex is no different. We have a childish view. Sex matters. Sex is important. It's not perverse. It's not dirty. It's not wrong. It's obviously natural, and it's obviously a biological necessity. And men aren't having it. Neither are women. People are having less sex now than the previous generation. And people are having sex later. So there's less sex happening. So what you have is a bunch of bottled up, sexually frustrated men. And if you're the owner of the society, that's an extremely valuable tool. That's an extremely valuable tool. bottled up, sexually frustrated men. So you can sell them anything. Hey, are you feeling sexually frustrated? Try SexBot 5839. Hey, come to the little whorehouse in Dallas. Hey, here's a pair of tits, buy Coke. Right? A bottled up, sexually repressed group of young men can be pointed at anything and told, tear that apart and you can have a goddamn orgasm. And they fucking will. Because we do not have the emotional maturity and the emotional connection to actually understand what's happening to us. It will happen. Billionaires will take these young incels and under figures like Peterson, right, who have gathered the incels together, and they'll just start pointing them at shit. And they'll say, if you want society to suck your cock, if you want to get your cock sucked, tear that apart. They'll do it. They'll do it. Because sexual energy is overwhelmingly powerful and it can overwhelm your consciousness. It can absolutely overwhelm your consciousness and make you incapable of seeing or understanding anything else. John, you talk about men like they are rape goons. I agree with you, but that changes nothing. You and rapists' abilities to rape. Yeah, it looks like we have to approach the implications of that. But let me be extremely specific on this point, Compton. Okay? There are, like, let's look at the graph behind me. How clearly can you see that? Am I just fucking around? Yeah, that's no good. It is useful to actually look at this, to have a better understanding of what the fuck I'm about to talk about. Please get over your hang-ups on religion. Please get over it. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Energy starts here. It is not intellectual. It is not intellectual, right? Your body is not intellectual. Your body begins here, where your cock is, where your vagina is. This is where energy begins. The only thing any creature that exists in the world needs in order to perpetuate the species is reproduction. That's it. That if you are a species that is reproducing, you are making it through evolution, right? You are going down the timeline. You are spreading your species through existence. Obviously, energy begins here and goes up through the body. Goes up through the body. And if this energy reaches here, your brain, right, without actually being contemplated along any of the other lines, then yeah, you're going to be a dumb fuck that does dumb fuck shit. You're going to do dumb fuck shit all the time. All the time. Because you're going to be driven by emotion. You're going to be driven by desire. You're going to be driven, you're just going to be a monkey. You're just going to be a monkey who thinks with his dick. And that's literally true. Like, that's literally true. Content, are you leading me once again down a fucking path? How dare you? But I actually think talking about the chakra system is extremely important. We are emotional creatures. First. We are not brains in bodies. We are bodies with brains. Christopher De Silva, how you doing, bud? And what we have is we have a bunch of pent up, yeah, great time to enter the stream, thanks Jack. We have a bunch of pent up sexual men, right? And that sex is legitimate. I'm not trying to say that they're perverse or perverted in any way. They want sex. There's nothing wrong with that. But that energy comes up and it goes into the pleasure chakra. It hits you right in the pleasure center where you laugh from, right? Where you laugh from. And they go, I'm not having any fun. Because they're not having any fun. Why? Because the system of capital ensures that you won't. And then it goes up here, right? And then I don't feel very confident. I feel like when I approach women, I get shut down and everything's shitty. I'm not having any fun, right? And they don't understand the reason why they're not having fun, and they don't feel any self-conscious, and they feel self-conscious about everything because they live in a system of capital that generates that. And so they're not having any love, right? They're talking like a bunch of fucking idiots, right? Because they refuse to understand the plight of women. And let's be very clear about one thing. Women have a plight of their own. Women have periods. Like, this is something that men do not fucking talk about, and it indicates how childish we are. If men had periods, we would be fucking whimpering babies. More than we already are. Women have periods. That's some real fucking shit right there. Like, that's some real fucking shit right there. That when we start talking about sex and engaging and saying, oh, why are women, all this kind of stuff? Well, there's women have periods. Women are capable of being fucking pregnant. Like, these are existent and real things that if you ignore, you can just make whatever claim you like. Which we do all the time. Because we have no empathy. So we talk like a bunch of fucking dumb monkeys. We're driven exclusively by our emotions. And we refuse to understand that it makes us look like a bunch of fucking goobers. And it's extremely useful for the capitalist class. It's extremely useful for the capitalist class to keep us this way. To keep us horny and frustrated and angry. As long as we're pointing that frustration and that anger at the object of our desire. And not at the capitalists themselves, who are responsible for this. Without a doubt. Like, what would be the best way to resolve this crisis? Give everybody time off. You want to fucking resolve this crisis? You want to make this crisis of male sexuality fucking go away? You want to resolve this? Have everybody chill the fuck out. Go to a beach. Smoke some weed. Do some drugs. Have a party. You want to resolve this? That's what you would do. Get everybody relaxed. Get everybody out of this fucking hellish grind that we're in. Get everybody to chill out. Dim the lights. Put on some candles. Turn on some music. Light some incense. Take a shower, shave. Look nice, look presentable. Do something physical. Send some energy through your body just for the sake of moving around. Live in the world. Let people see one another, enjoying each other and enjoying the space and just having a good time. Let people linger their vision upon you. Enjoy yourself for just a moment. You know what's going to happen? Right? If you give people time off all together, all at once, everyone's gonna get laid. But if you do that, then you lose your tool. Then you lose your tool. Who's gonna kick in doors and go get those Jews? Who's gonna kick in the doors? Who's gonna go smash in some gay people's heads? Who's gonna do any of that? So as long as the fucking manosphere keeps looking at the object of their desire and blaming that, and then turning its ire on any sexual being who is not of their desire but is critical of them, and smashing them with a hammer, right? As long as that's the dynamic, capitalists are happy. And as always, within this conversation of sexuality, Kea, you're completely right. Kea, correct me. Kea, Kaya. Kea, Kaya. Which of those two is right? Is it Kea or is it Kaya? I feel like I've asked you before, and I apologize for this. I just want to get it right. It's the second one. So Kaya, Kaya, Kaya. Kaya. I work with someone named Kai, so that'll be really easy. Kaya. Thank you. And thank you for your understanding. I apologize. Transylvania, I'm not trying to ignore you. You had a big statement here. Liberal identity politics is all about removing everything radical, everything intersectional, and focusing on the overlap of patriarchy and white supremacy with class-based oppression from the dialogue. They have successfully removed the material class analysis, correct, and replaced it with a superficial representation and aesthetics, virtue signaling, and equality only for the wealthy and privileged. This is most noticeable with the reclamation and reappropriation of once radical language and radical ideas into easily marketable, corporate packaged, ready-made identities as products. But this has changed nothing about the underlying material basis and the structures of oppression that underpin bourgeoisie society. Patriarchy, white supremacy, imperialism, colonialism, and capitalism. That is exactly right, Transylvanian. That's beautifully stated. That's beautifully stated. That's beautifully stated. Thank you for writing that all out. That's precisely correct, and that's why the liberals in the NDP are not they're not going to win this next election. They're not going to win this next election. That they're losing this battle because people are beginning to see through it. If not intellectually, like, people aren't beginning to see through it in their brain. People are seeing through it in their body. That they are intrinsically understanding that this is not working. And moreover, lots of people are getting exhausted by it. Like, there is a quality. Like, it doesn't matter if you're sitting over there and you think that you're completely right and completely justified in your view of gender politics and all of that, okay? Well, that doesn't matter. Because what matters is that people are tired of being nagged about it. You can see this starting to happen in Disney movies. You can see this starting to happen in the gender swapping and all of that that's happening. That there is a cultural backlash that is occurring against this because people are exhausted by it. They're tired of it. They don't care if it's right. They're just tired of the finger wagging. They're tired of having to constantly deal with this, like, nagging, like, hey now, hey. They're tired of it. And it doesn't matter if you're right. That if you take people who are fucking exhausted by a thing, they will backlash against it. And we're seeing that pretty clearly. Pretty clearly. That it won't be too much longer now until we start seeing movies that are straight up just male fantasy. It won't be much longer now. Like, men are going to stop watching these movies. Like, 50% of your audience is not going to show up. Like, you're going to change. You're going to see a big change. It's going to happen quick. John, just watch some Abby Martin videos. You'll be all right. Oh. Let's just have a moment for Abby Martin. Abby Martin, wherever you are, I hope that you're having just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful life. Like, not only is Abby Martin just like a physically beautiful person, she's just so fucking intelligent, and I admire her so much. My admiration for Abby Martin is so fucking high, off the charts. Like, Gaza Fights for Freedom is a seminal masterpiece. Just absolutely critical watching. And her passion and her dedication is only matched by her overwhelming beauty. The only thing she ever did wrong was get married and have a kid. How dare you betray me like that, Abby Martin? How dare you betray me like that, Abby Martin? Our love was real. Our love was real. Okay, enough of that. Enough of that. Yeah, and Al Bundy is actually a really interesting figure to bring up. Al Bundy, like, if they tried to air Married with Children today, it would be destroyed. Baldy McNosehair, thank you so much for your donation. Thank you so much, bud. I appreciate that. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Good opportunity. Slam the like button. Hit the like button. If the least you do is hit the like button, then thank you so much. And if you have it in your heart or in your wallet, which is more important, to just toss a couple bucks my way, I'd really appreciate it. Baldy McNosehair, thank you so much, bud. I appreciate it. Well, and handsome, thank you, sir. Well. Yeah, no, and that's just it. Like, Abby is the GOAT, and her husband is based too. Like, when her husband stood up and shouted at Bush, like, that's just fucking baller. It's just baller, right? Like, if Abby Martin married anybody less than the man that she married, I would be like, what the fuck, Abby? But she, like, married, like, an Iraqi war veteran who is now an anti-war advocate who has stood up against people like George W. Bush. Like, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. You know? Like, what? Yeah, the only thing greater than Abby Martin's beauty is her taste in men, right? I do think your diatribe about sexual frustration just now is a bit too Freudian. That makes a bit of sense. I've read a lot of Freud. But you're not totally wrong. Capital uses everything it can to divide and control. I try to keep my understanding of sex rooted in the chakra system. That's what I really attempt to do. Because I feel like we have a very inverted and perverse view of sex itself. That if a man looks at a woman that he finds sexually attractive and goes, oh, how interesting, that act by itself makes him a pervert, according to our society. I think that's despicable. Like, not just wrong, but despicable. And I feel like if another guy looks at another guy doing that, and even in jest goes, you little pervert, I think that you're doing that person a great disservice. A massive disservice. Right? Because even saying that in jest implies that that man has done something wrong. When he hasn't. Now, if he leers in such a way to lead the woman into uncomfort, to the degree that she feels as though she needs to react and remove herself from the situation, well, then he's being an ass. Then he's being not only rude, but also spreading danger into the society. But that's not what men are being shit on for. Men are being shit on for simply enjoying the presence of women. And I just can't tolerate this shit anymore. I'm so over it. Oh no. Men like looking at women. Oh no. Like, grow up. Fucking take your childish baby brain view of the world and get the fuck out of here. I'm super duper over it. I mix Al Bundy and Ted Bundy up sometimes. The thing that's great about Al Bundy, right, is that Al Bundy is like the inner child of men. Right? He's the inner child of men. Like, he's not... I don't think any man is actually in... I don't think any man actually acts the way that Al Bundy acts. But I definitely think that when men look at Al Bundy, they think, that's definitely my inner voice. There's definitely something going on there that's definitely true and real. And I also think just Married with Children by itself as like a cultural phenomenon is definitely worth looking at. Like, Al Bundy was a minimum wage shopping mall shoe salesman, not a manager, a shoe salesman, right? Who hated his job, was too exhausted to really interact with his beautiful wife, who incidentally didn't work. His two kids who also, didn't work, didn't have an income. And he had a house, a car. He had an incredibly stable life. And this was seen as reasonable, relatable. People understood this. Right? Literally no one in my generation, even the most successful people I know, even the most successful, most bought in to the idea of capital that I know, do not have that life. Like, that's how quickly it degraded. That we literally went from minimum wage shopping mall shoe salesman should be able to support a wife, kids, house, car, and go on vacations, and that should be considered fucking normal, to everybody in the house needs to be working all the time. No, you don't get any vacations. If you do have a car, it is exclusively to get you back and forth from work. And that happens in the space of one generation. Like, people should watch Married with Children and be fucking furious. Furious with how much we've lost as a people. Furious with how much we've lost. And we are furious. That's why we're voting conservative. I read a document from Venezuela that says the U.S. is using Protestantism in Latin America to promote neoliberalism. Yep, the Protestant work ethic, absolutely. They killed priests who promote the liberation theology. Yep. That definitely happened. The assassination of priests teaching the liberation theology is crucial. The Protestant work ethic aligns very closely with the neoliberal idea that it's individualism is all that matters, even though it's completely falsifiable. You can falsify it in a single statement. Like, the individualist movement and the Protestant work ethic, right, essentially says that it is, like, let's put it in theological terms. The Protestant work ethic essentially says that a single individual can overwhelm the power and glory of God. That's essentially what's being said. To put that in secular terms, the idea that a single person's energy can overwhelm not only the collected energy of all other people, but also the collected energy of all people that ever existed, and also the collective energy of the universe, is fucking baby brain shit. Like, you've got to be really dumb to think that's true. Like, you can try, but if the universe wants to put you on its ass, if God wants to crush you under his thumb, it's going to happen. And you're not a bad person for having experienced it. Yeah, of course you got a crush on Peggy Bundy. We all had a crush on Peggy Bundy. Are you kidding me? Like, when I was 14, 15, I didn't understand. Like, I didn't get why Al was always, like, Peggy was constantly throwing herself at Al. And Al was constantly like, geez, Peggy, do we have to? Like, he was constantly complaining about it. And as a 14, 15-year-old boy, I was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, well, you should be over the moon about this. But once you become a working man, right, that Al Bundy's anti-sexualism, or his desire to not have sex with his wife, doesn't come from an inattraction to his wife, but just he's exhausted. So for him, sex is just more work. Right? Jack, I don't know what's going on with you, bud, but I'm glad you're here. No disruption whatsoever, bud. You're a beautiful person. He's also the product of culture and era that he was written in. Absolutely. We cannot expect cultural norms to remain static. If dialectical materialism teaches us anything, it's that change is the only constant. The Simpsons are similarly anachronistic. That middle-class lifestyle doesn't exist anymore, and no matter how many walls the mega folks manage to build, it ain't coming back. Protestantism and capitalism emerged around the same time in history. They're both very influenced each other's ideological development. Yeah, and bringing up The Simpsons is really case in point. There's a reason why nobody gives a shit about The Simpsons anymore. There's a reason why The Simpsons are no longer a cultural force, right? That they exist, and there they are, and you can look at them, much in the same way that, like, the Flintstones still exists, and you can go and find their shit and watch their shit. But, like, The Simpsons was like a cultural phenomenon when it came out, because it truly captured the middle-class ethos and the middle-class lifestyle. And I would argue that if The Simpsons wanted to become culturally relevant again, and they don't, but if they wanted to, then Marge needs to get a job. Lisa and Bart need to also be working, like a paper route, right? Some kind of like small scale sort of stuff. And they should not be able to survive on that. That everyone should be working, everyone should be exhausted, and they still shouldn't be paying the bills. That would be how you would make The Simpsons relatable again. Right? Instead, like, Bob's Burgers showed up. And Bob's Burger is slightly more relatable because everybody's working at the burger shop and barely scraping by while doing it. My only wish is for Jugmeat to call up on Trudeau for a basic income all across Canada, threaten election. No, he won't. No. Jugmeat is controlled dissent. And moreover, and I think this is actually crucially important to understand, the NDP base is so detached from the rest of the public and the rest of the populace that they actually think that if they called for a basic income, that would alienate voters into the Conservatives. Like, I'm dead serious when I say that NDPers are detached from reality. They don't know what's going on. Like, outside of the union halls and outside of the mosques, they literally don't know what, like, grocery store workers are saying. They don't know what retail workers are saying, what cafeteria workers are saying, what waiters and waitresses are saying. They don't know what the service industry workers are saying. They don't know. Straight up, they don't know. And so Jugmeat's never going to call for a basic income, not only because he operates as controlled dissent, and he exists in order to defend the capitalist class from policies like a basic income, but even his own base is standing around saying the dumbest shit you've ever heard in your life. Like, way dumber than the shit that comes out of conservative mouths. Like, the shit that the conservatives are saying is stupid, don't get me wrong. Like, it's just as detached. But the shit that the NDPers are saying is, like, it's equally as detached. Like, it's not rooted in a reality. Like, if Jugmeat Singh stood up and said we are supporting a basic income and we're moving forward with it, he would gain power. And he would gain power simply by providing an alternative. Right? That the reason why people aren't going out to vote isn't because they're like, fuck NDP, I don't give a fuck. It's because they don't see a difference. Well, give them a difference. Give them a legitimate difference. Give them something to look at and go, that's different. And people will come out and vote for that. But that's not what Jugmeat's going to do. That's not what the NDP are there for. Yeah, but if our lousy government did anything, I'd hope it would be a UBI. Yeah. Well, what will happen? Like, it's how the healthcare system actually happened. Is that eventually provinces will do it, right? Like, you're seeing that starting to happen across the East Coast. That you're starting to see major cities and major places pass basic income legislation and support for basic income. It will happen eventually in a province where one province will pass a basic income. And the conservative / liberal / NDP response will be like, oh, well, they're just going to go bankrupt. And then the opposite will happen. It'll blow the place up, like in a positive way. It'll like, right? everybody will stabilize and everybody will be saying, man, oh, this is the greatest thing and we should have done this decades ago and all that kind of stuff. And then the premier of the place that did that will likely run for federal office. And then it'll be like the Liberals or the NDP that finally go, oh shit, we're going to lose to these guys. Right? Ontario first, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're way, like Ontario is the imperial core. Like we're way too far down the garden path for that. Like we're literally going to need to see a province enact it. And then we're going to literally have to hold up the literal receipts in front of these conservatives and be like, it's cheaper. Everyone's happier. Fuck your Protestant work ethic. And then a lot of them will still not do it. Because they're psychos. It's pretty straightforward. Like, a lot of people want people to suffer. We didn't do the drop. We can do the drop. David Lynch. I got 15 people watching right now. We better have fucking 15 numbers in this chat right here. We got an 8. We got a 6. We got a 9.
Number.
I'm going big.
October 11, 2022.
I'm going with a 10.
10 balls.
10 balls. Each ball has a number.
Numbers 1 through 10.
Numbers 1 through 10. Come on, I got 3 numbers in chat? What the fuck is this? 8, 6, 9. We got a 3. 4 numbers? What the hell? Here we go. Here we go. Got a 1. We got a 5. 6. DM. All right, DM. It's time for you to level with us. Are you fucking cheating? Are you fucking cheating? You win this thing way more often than everybody else. You win this thing way more obvious. Way more than everybody else, dude. But you're also like one of my biggest cheerleaders, so I don't know. I'd be blow me away, dude. If I found out, like if you admitted it, if you were like, yeah, John, I've been cheating this whole time, I'd be like, why? It's for nothing. No, Christopher De Silva, 3 is half of 8. Right? Like if you take an 8 and you break it in half, you have a 3. 3 is half of 8. Someone is keeping track. Check it out. So if you go into the comments, right? The very first comment is always the guy keeping track of the sequence. He also keeps a track of the sum, the average, the median, and the frequencies. Right? So you get 62, 62, 89. So the highest number is 8 and 5. There you go. Right? If you want to see the sequence, here it is. Isn't that just the dumbest? I love it though. I love that he's doing this shit. All right. Well, and DM, because you won, you just called out the song name. So we're gonna do it. Oh. I'm gonna go easy on this one though. So I'm gonna capo it. Because my voice is not back to where. Whoo, listen to that. You are not in tune, my sweetheart. Oh, yeah. This is the quality stuff you guys tune into. This is what you're tuning in for right here. You know what? I don't care. Slightly out of tune. You guys will deal with it, I'm sure. And you know what? It'll give it a country twang. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Transylvanian fucked me up with that. You're right, dude. You're right. I should do her a favor, and I should do you guys a favor. Too bad. We're all going through this together. She hasn't been tuned in 2 weeks. You're gonna go find a video about brutalist architecture? Have a good night, John. Have a good night. All right. Yeah. Slightly? I promise, guys. Stick around. It'll be worth it. Jack Reed, this one will be for you, bud. It doesn't take but a moment. I don't know why I don't just do it. Poor girl hasn't been tuned in 2 weeks because I've been sick. And you know what? Whatever. I'll do it in the proper register as well. See? Just as easy as that. when everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice. Antarctica is covered in ice. And I still believe I will always believe. I will always believe. Even as the deserts spread. Even as the wildfires burn down our forests and our cities and our towns. Even as the famines spread. Even as the fascists fill the streets. I will always believe. I will always believe. The earth was a garden before we even got here. The earth made it a garden for us to be spawned into. That not only did it create this beautiful garden for us to live in, it created us to live within it. We don't need to invent anything. We don't need to create anything. We don't need to be smart or clever, intelligent. We don't even need to be wise. That the earth is more than capable of healing itself. Thank you very much. And if we want to be here, if we want to be here, to see this absolute miracle of the earth healing itself, then all we have to do is stop. Jack Reed, yes I did. Yeah. Thank you very much. Revolutionary optimism is a hell of a drug. Call me an addict. Oh, well, thank you, Transylvania. Thank you for your words tonight. Thank you for your words tonight. I think that it is important for us to acknowledge we can win. One way or another, the earth will win. The question is, how much damage are we going to do to ourselves? And I think that the hope that I truly have is how simple the solution actually is. Note that I don't say easy, but simple. that all we really have to do is just put down the tools. Stop stepping up to the machines. Stop participating. That throughout history, the revolutionary cry has been, stand up. Well, I say that it's lie down. That the capitalists call people like me lazy, while they insist that productivity means committing suicide. There is hope for humanity. That we can make it through this. But it simply will require us to put the tools in the toolbox and put the toys away. I think that's one of the great ironies and one of the silliest things about this society and this civilization is that you have all these people walking around, you know, the freedom-loving crowd and all these people talking about taking responsibility and oh, you just need to take responsibility and all this. No one has less responsibility than conservatives, than capitalists. No one has less concept of responsibility than these people. They're literally arguing that we should destroy the species for fun. That's literally the argument. These people are not adults. That we are ruled by children who have yet to grow up. And you can especially see that. One of the things that I confront all the time. Lou, good to see you. I confront all the time. I tell people, we have to stop. And they immediately jump to, oh, so you want to starve the species, you know? We require fossil fuels to burn. Like, literally, dude, like, there are other things that we could do. A lot of other things. Take a look at what's going on in Times Square. Take a look at what's going on in Times Square. Like, we're bullshitting ourselves. Like, we're delusional. Like, delusional. If we genuinely think that there's nothing that we can do. Oh no, I mean, development of productive forces. Yeah, absolutely. I'm yet to see any of that. Where's our productive forces exactly? Like the development of productive forces. If you want to get into what we could do in terms of productive forces, I think that we should tear up every single lawn, plant gardens. We should tear up the golf courses. That every single scrap of land should be converted into gardens. And that should be done systemically. That we should hire people whose entire job is to go to people's lawns and tear them up and plant gardens. There's a productive force that I can get behind. There's something that I think makes sense. Right? Like, what we've done right now, is cool in a, like, energy doesn't matter kind of perspective. Like, even if you want to take the perspective that we've gotten to where we are just honestly, but let's say for a minute that we did, that we've just stumbled into this, like, oh, yeah, the imperialists can't be trusted with them. Yeah. No, that the transfer of productive force to China is baffling even to the Chinese. Like, I gotta find this guy's name, because there's an ambassador who I run across from time to time. He ends up in panel shows and panel discussions and all this kind of stuff. And he keeps saying, why in the hell did Americans and America allow its manufacturing to be shipped to a foreign country? What the hell? What the hell did you think you were going to gain? What the hell did you think you were going to gain by shipping your manufacturing base into the hands of a foreign power? How did you think that was going to go? Right? Jack, have you not heard any of my music? I give myself a C plus on that one. That performance was like a C plus level. Still sick. It's been a long time since I sung that one too. Been a long time since I sung that one. I love that song though. It burns down anyway. I think that's something important for all of us to remember, right? Like, You don't need to follow the laws of a suicidal nation. You just don't. Like, you don't need to follow, like, Prince John's rules. You don't need to follow Darth Vader's rules, right? You need to acknowledge them because they can do violence against you, but you're not morally obligated to follow them. Like, a society that abandons itself and commits mass suicide, you don't need to fucking go along with that, right? You don't need to follow its rules. Do what you like. Do what you like. And as this process goes along, I think more and more the revolutionaries and the people who see reality for as it is are just going to have to start, begging for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. Just start doing stuff. Just start doing stuff. The logic of capitalism compelled them to act that way. They could not have done otherwise. The profit maximization had to be chased. It's being chased straight off a cliff. Yep. Like America impoverished itself. Created, essentially re-erected a monarchy. Like, the investor class is not that much different than a monarchy. Like, someone like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, like, these are monarchical rulers. Like, we're not gonna, like, the wealth's not gonna trickle down. And they're doing everything they can to make sure that no power will be able to come in to the the political institutions, in order to be rid of them. They bought them. Right? And should a credible institution, or should a credible organized force start to go through those apparati, well, they'll do everything they can to destroy it. And they won't stop short of assassination. Like, they're not going to not assassinate people. We've seen them assassinate people. We know they assassinate people. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. They were all assassinated. Like, they're never going to let an actual, like, legitimate political force in to the political apparatus. People who are standing up and saying we need to get rid of the ownership class. Well, they're never going to allow that to happen. Right? And, like, sure, go ahead and try. And when it fails, because the political leader that you have that's actually making gains gets assassinated, welcome back to the revolution. Because that's ultimately what we need to do. Like, the system will not respond rationally. Take a look at the screen in front of you. You tell me, do you think the system is responding rationally? I fucking don't. Oh shit, we're in a crisis where energy is going out of crazy. Oh my god, energy's all over the place. Gotta keep this H&M lit up. That's useful. That's productive. That really matters. Right? Really fucking matters. That we've got these billboards lit up. All these signs lit up. Do you think we're responding rationally? Do you think the system is capable of responding rationally? Do you think it even wants to be capable of responding rationally? The system is the sickness. That's right. That's right. I think one of the most effective things that the religious acolytes of neoliberalism have convinced people is that economics is something other than people. That people are obviously the most important part of any political system or of any economic system. That what happens to the people and their well-being and their stability is obviously the most important part. And instead, we've been convinced that economics has something to do with a financialization, with money, right? It has something to do with it, but it isn't the thing itself. That the thing itself is people interacting with resources, with assets, with tangible things that you can feel and touch. Not abstractness, not digital markets, not the stock market, not money, but what goods and services you have access to, what you can physically see and physically touch, the material conditions of your life. Like, and the reason why I know the conservatives are going to win this next election is because the NDP and the liberals are incapable of addressing the seriousness of this crisis. Like, the housing crisis is a major crisis. Like, we are going to witness a type of wealth distribution. Yeah, billboards shining into the windows of people freezing from high energy. Yeah. Like, we're going to witness an erection of a generational wealth divide that is as bad as any that has happened in human history. That the way the housing market has gone, it has frozen out millions of people, and people who would consider themselves middle class. It's just frozen them out of it. And all of those properties are being bought up by corporate power and wealthy landlords. And so we're turning our society into a rentier society, which essentially means that everyone is going to be working on behalf of these landlords who do nothing of value whatsoever. They're literally parasites. Like, literally parasites. Yeah, when people have no more money to buy those products that their own labor produces, those billboards will go dark too. I actually think that the billboards will be the last thing to go. Right? Because this is your first point of contact. What you see on those billboards, those are the shining icons of power. And that the propagandists need those billboards. They need those to be there. Because if those billboards aren't there, right? Like, what they're doing is they're shining their ideology into reality. Right? That whatever you see on these billboards, you're just going to naturally assume has legitimacy. It's just going to be considered completely legitimate. Even if it isn't. And so they'll never shut these down. They'll watch people starve. Like, you'll literally have starving people underneath these billboards before they shut those down. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they can't sell products. I think this is crucial to understand. It doesn't matter if the billboards are not selling products. What the billboards are doing is exerting power. That if you see Thor on a billboard, if you see these Marvel movies on a billboard, it's an exertion of power. That you're on the street, but I'm in the sky. That I am looking down on you, while you are looking up at me. And that dynamic is extremely valuable. Like, we will literally have to mandate it. Straight up, just shut the billboards down before they do that. And we'll never mandate it because they don't want that. Yeah, Michael Hudson talks a lot about the parasitism of the rentier class, how Western economies are centered around this. Yeah. No, the financialization of the markets because of the fiat currency, it's going to be a complete disaster. Oh, yeah. Surprised we haven't seen any homeless people in this video, frankly. Although, is there one coming up here? It's a busker, technically not homeless. I was just a little boy when my mom and dad divorced. Through my tantrums, cried my tears, I'd keep their vows by force. Now that I'm an older man, I see it had to be this way. My love for them, it keeps on growing each and every day. Time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. Every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can, and though they're not the people I expected they would be, well, I love them all the same. I just want them to be free. "10 years, me and my wife, we traveled round the globe. Shared regrets, they filled our lives with hope. Then one day she tells me that a man is not for her. Those 10 years are a memory now, but my love for her still stirs. And time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. Every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can, and though she's not the person I expected she would be, well, I love her all the same. I just want her to be free." My love had a little girl, a scrappy tomboy type. I watched her blossom like a flower, but she felt not quite right. Then one day she tells me she's a young man, not a girl. I picked her up and held her close, then sent my son into the world. And time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can, and though he's not the person that I expected he would be, well, I love him all the same. I just want him to be free. And though they're not the people that I expected they would be, well, I love them all the same. I just want them to be free. Yeah, if Willie Nelson played that song at the Grand Ole Opry, I think that it would heal America. And I think Willie Nelson's exactly the guy. Right? Someone like Willie Nelson, you know? Someone that everybody universally respects. Nobody disrespects Willie Nelson. Nobody's standing around being like, Willie Nelson, what a piece of shit. Everybody respects Willie Nelson. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I don't give a shit who you are. And I think if Willie Nelson were to stand up at the Grand Ole Opry and sing that song, it could change a lot of hearts and change a lot of minds. I've always thought that about that song when I finally wrote it down. When I sang it, I thought to myself, there's something here. There's something powerful. I don't know if I'm the guy to sing it. I don't know if I'm the guy to play it and send it into the world. But I know that if there was somebody who these MAGA people respected, if there was somebody that these country people respected, who stood up and played that song at a place like the Grand Ole Opry, Good old country, respectable. You know? I think it could heal a lot of hearts. You know? I think it could change a lot of minds. Somebody like Dolly Parton. Ooh, Miley Cyrus. I think Miley Cyrus would convince a lot of people. Willie Nelson? Willie Nelson's good old country. Like, Willie Nelson's just one of those country artists. I don't know that I could actually tell you, like, the Willie Nelson song. But come on, man. Like, you're telling me you don't know who Willie Nelson is? No, you know who Willie Nelson is. You know. There's just no way. Like, Willie Nelson's been around since forever. He's classic country. How old is this guy right now? Willie Nelson, come on. Willie Nelson's got to be like 89, yeah. Yep. So I'm losing my window. And like, what would be the song? That's the thing. Like, funny how Hello Walls is going crazy. Yeah. Crazy for feeling about you. Right? That's a Willie Nelson song, popularized by Patsy Cline. Not Tonight You Are? I don't know what that means, Lou. Oh, yeah. On the road again. I can't wait to get on the road again. Like, that's a Willie Nelson tune. No, Willie Nelson is like... And I think what's so interesting about Willie Nelson is that... Like quite a few of these country stars, I think about somebody like Dolly Parton. They are in many ways just a gift. Just a gift to Transylvanian. I gotta contradict this. I gotta contradict this. I'm from rural Manitoba. I know, not only do I know who these conservatives are, but I know, I know the culture that they live in. That what would be more surprising to me would be someone like Nelson actually singing that song. Because I do think that it would take an act of bravery. I think it would be a brave act for someone like Nelson or someone like Dolly Parton or George Strait or any of these guys to stand up and play a song like that. But like Willie Nelson is like, he's considered a patriarch. Like he's one of the great patriarchs. Like he's not... Maybe you would get a certain degree of like, well, Nelson's gone soft. I think that's where they would land more than anything. Nelson's gone soft, right? Or you know, that's just Dolly. I think you get a lot of that. I think there would be a lot of hand waving away, but I don't think that you would see the booing, that kind of thing. I think that would be very... I think that would be surprising to me. Like really. That conservatives do have... Like, they're not lying when they talk about the hierarchy. They're not. Like, they're not lying about that. That they respect the hierarchy and they respect those who have ascended it. Like and someone like Nelson... is no, and don't get me wrong, I don't disagree that, like, sure, the Fox News types, but they end up discrediting themselves then more than they already have. Like, and maybe maybe they could convince a younger audience, somebody who doesn't actually know who Willie Nelson is. But the older audience, I think, is very, like they're never gonna turn on Willie Nelson. That's why I think it would be effective if he did it, right? Like, and make no mistake, like someone like Willie Nelson, like why do you think the conversation surrounding marijuana shifted so dramatically? It's because figures like Willie Nelson started coming out and saying, I smoke weed. Right? Like, cultural change, especially amongst conservatives, tends to occur when respected members of the community stand up and make a strong stance. I've seen that happen a lot. I've seen that happen a lot in conservative environments. The most beautiful one I ever saw was in my hometown community of Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. That when the gay rights movement was really pushing to allow gay marriage to occur, it was still taboo to be gay, right? It was still very much, you could be, like, my own community was arguing, and remember, this is a fundamentalist Christian community, was still arguing that homosexuality is a sin, and that you go to hell if you are a homosexual. And in that environment, a 50-year-old man, who we all knew, he was part of the church, stood up and said that I am gay. That said that he was gay, not me, but him. And he was a man with a wife, kids, right? We all knew him. Everybody knew who this guy was. And suddenly, the conservative abstract ideology was confronted with reality. And a clear example of a gay person who had always been in their midst, living this secret life. And immediately, people began going, well, I know who he is. Like, if this man is going to hell, like, whoa, we're all, like, what are we even doing here? And the women especially, immediately were just like, no, we know this man. We know him. He's a good man. He's a good man. And once the women went, the men weren't long behind. And so conservatives do respond positively to respected members of their community taking a stance that runs counter to the narrative. He put a face on homosexuality. Yeah, that's a fine way of saying it, Ligandizi. Because so much of what's happening in these conservative churches and in these conservative places is that they are living in an abstract environment. That these things are an abstraction to them, right? That's why it's so desperately important for the capitalists to not give voice or not give personhood to homelessness. It's desperately important that homelessness remain invisible. But you certainly don't want a personification of homelessness. You certainly don't want people to be able to see a homeless person and then empathize with that homeless person, right? Like, where's Charlie Chaplin right now? Right? Like, Charlie Chaplin, his character was the tramp. He was a homeless man. All of everything that he ever did on film, up to The Great Dictator, was this character, this homeless man. And it entrenched all of what he did in a class discussion that was obvious and overt and in front of your face. And it made you, as the viewer, empathize with the plight of the homeless and the poor and the working class. And perhaps what you saw in Charlie Chaplin, you would apply to others that you see in the world around you. And so it's very important. It's very, very important for the capitalists to make a figure like Charlie Chaplin disappear and become invisible. Never allow that class discussion and that class character to literally exist. Right? Because could you imagine what would happen to these conservative churches? Like, imagine what would happen if you actually made like a story about Jesus Christ that followed the book and showed it to them. And one of the things that I think is really telling about what happens in terms of telling the story of Christ is that the grotesqueness is usually what's highlighted. That what is highlighted in the story of Christ is not what he said and what he taught, which is the bulk of what the books are about, but his crucifixion. I mean, if you watch like The Passion, for example, it's essentially snuff porn, right? I was a fundamentalist Christian when I watched Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. I was a Christian when I watched that, and I thought that it was grotesque. I still think it's grotesque. Like, it is snuff porn. Like, you want to watch like a guy get tortured, whipped, and crucified? There you go. Passion of the Christ. That hooks you right up. Hooks you right fucking up. And yeah, instead you get superhero movie after superhero movie shoved down your throat year after year, glorifying billionaires in the US military. I actually have, because I've talked about that a lot. And it's nice when every so often someone comes along, someone serious and credible comes along and confirms exactly what I've been saying the entire time. Watchmen creator Alan Moore. Adults loving superhero movies is infantile and can be a precursor to fascism. Watchmen creator Alan Moore's hatred for superhero movies is well known, as he once called them a blight to cinema and also to culture to a degree. But he dragged them even more during a recent interview with The Guardian. Moore described adults' continued love of superhero movies as an infantilization that can act as a precursor to fascism. I said round about 2011 that I thought it had serious and worrying implications for the future if millions of adults were queuing up to see Batman movies, Moore said, because that kind of infantilization, that urge towards simpler times, simpler realities, that can very often be a precursor to fascism. Moore expressed worry with the notion that hundreds of thousands of adults are now lining up to see characters and situations that had been created to entertain the 12-year-old boys. And it was always boys of 50 years ago. I didn't really think that superheroes were adult fare, Moore said. I think that this was a misunderstanding born of what happened in the 1980s, to which I must put my hand up to a considerable share of the blame, though it was not intentional. When things like Watchmen were first appearing, there were an awful lot of headlines saying comics have grown up. I tend to think that no, comics hadn't grown up. There were a few titles that were more adult than people were used to, but the majority of comic titles were pretty much the same as they'd ever been. It wasn't comics growing up. I think it was more comics meeting the emotional age of the audience, coming the other way. I will always love and adore the comics medium, but the comics industry and all of the stuff attached to it just became unbearable. In a 2020 interview in October, Moore revealed that he had not seen a superhero movie since Tim Burton's original Batman in 1989. He added, "I don't watch any of them. All of these characters have been stolen from their original creators. All of them, if you try to make them for the adult world, then I think it becomes kind of grotesque." I think there's something accurate about that. Like, it's odd what we're doing with these superheroes. And the more we try to make them real, right? The more we try to actually accept what they would be like in reality, the more obvious it becomes that they would be deluded, mentally ill fascists. They would have to be, almost as a default. That there's a reason why they can't create a Superman movie worth a damn. There's a reason why they can't write a Superman movie. Because to write a Superman movie would be to put a man like Superman, who stands for ideals like truth and justice, up against his traditional villain, which would be Jeff Bezos, or Lex Luthor if you prefer. They're never going to do that. No capitalist is going to take someone like Superman and pit him up against the owners of the society. To make a Superman movie is to make a movie about how bad capitalism is, and that the owners of the society are villains. They're never going to do that. Yeah, a lot of Christians fetishize that whole passion narrative. There is this weird cult of glorification of suffering within Christianity. Yeah, because suffering is like, you will be rewarded in heaven, right? So the suffering you experience now will benefit you later. And that manifests not just in the post-death, like in heaven, but if you're suffering now, well, then glory will come to you later, right? That it builds character, that sort of thing. All right, guys. I did it. I made it to the end. 10 minutes over even. Look at me. What a champion I am. A little pat on the back. A little pat on the back. Take that. Take that, sickness. Get fucked. Get fucked, sickness. I didn't even go through any of my headlines, really. All right, guys. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.